So yesterday we finished regarding the site access for the fire protection equipment, site access for fire department access, right? The fire trucks and all. Today we are going to start from the checklist, right? So if you are reviewing some plan for fire department access requirement to your facilities or the facilities you are going to design, we have some checklist here as for International Fire Code 503, Section 503, subsection 2.3, right? So the first one we have the load of the road, right? So suppose this is your access road, right? So if the trucks is going, it can carry a load of minimum around 75,000 pounds, right? The gross vehicle weight. So this will be the weight of the vehicles and shall be bear by the road. So if you are making, you have to look for the plan also, right? The concrete and the pitch materials used to make the roads. These are the requirements from the IFC. The second we have the vertical clearance. We have 13 feet, right, and 6 inch. And the width which is 120 feet means 6 meter, right? The width of the road is 20 feet and the height of the road is around 13 feet, which is almost around 4 meter. So the best way, to keep all the points in the mind while reviewing a plan, we have to go with the checklist so that we can just tick it out, what is their requirement and how they have provided based on the various code requirement. Right. And the route shall be providing for all the seasons, right? Summer, winter, spring, and autumn. And 5.3.2 talks about the building exterior walls shall be within 150 feet of fire access road so that the fire department team can go easily around that one. And then we discuss a study regarding the turnaround load, how they are going to turn at in the dead end area. When the road closed, they have to go back. So we have to put those requirement also. And then we have some additional one, right? The turning radius requirement for the roads for reverse direction of the trucks while going out of the scheme. And then angle of approach and departure for fire protection shall not exceed 8 degrees Celsius, right? So normally angle of approach is that, this is our flat road, right? They are talking about the incline, they are talking about the slope, right? Suppose this is our angle of approach, right? And then angle of departure. The radius should not be more than 8 degrees Celsius, right? From the horizontal plane. This is what they are talking, because if it is more than that, the lower parts of the trucks, the fire trucks might get obstructed with the road. And they talks about the signage and all, right? So we have to follow IFC 503 for all those fire access team requirement. Then moving on to the next topic, which is internal and external fire spread consideration, right? For those sites, it should be as for NFPA 80A, right? So NFPA 80A gives us the information about, it gives us the guidance on how to determine the separation distance a building should be from another building or from any storage yard. So they are normally talking about the separation distance between two building or the separation distance between any yard or the building based on the flammable construction or combustible construction, right? Just to safeguard the the firefighters team to the areas and also protecting the building in case of the fire from the principal building to the side one. So NFPA 80A considers exposure fire from right a adjacent building and yard storage, right? So adjacent building where occupant of the exposed building does not have control over the occupancy, construction or protection for the exposing building, right? So suppose there are two building, right? This is building one and this is building two. So this building occupant have no control over this building, but this building in case of the fire can expose this building, right, and can damage this building. So for that NFE 80A have some requirement regarding the exposure protection. Normally the spread of fire from one building to another building, right, in the storage or a building separated by, right, we know that from the basic of science the heat transfer mode is we have conduction, convection and radiation. Now here we have don't have metal to metal contacts, so heat will transfer through the radiation, right? So where heat is transferred by energy waves which heat up the building material, causing them to fire. As we discussed that if this is one building and this is another building, right? So this building have no control. Something happened to this one, it will the heat will transfer to the nearby building by radiations and those by energy waves, right? And those heat will ignite the materials into the nearby building and it will catches the fire. The second we have the convection heating, right? Convection means heat is traveling through the fluid medium. So here we have fluid as air, right? So when air heated and passes by the building, it causes the building material to heat up and ignite. Right? So we have the radiation and we have the convection heating. So while making internal and external fire plants consideration during the fire plants, we have to take care about the adjacent building, right? If it is following the IFC code. So we have two types of the clearance must be considered. The first one we have to talk about. The first is the horizontal separation, right? What is the separation between these two building, between a building or between the yard storage and the building. The second one is regarding the difference in the height of the building, right? When exposing building is lower than the exposed building, right? So in this case, the fire from the roll building will go higher and it will catch the fire to the nearby building. To calculate the horizontal separations requirement, the percentage of opening severity and the ratio between height, width, and all exposing building must be determined. And those for A require regarding the requirement of the separation between two buildings and the height requirement. We have to look for the percentage of opening in exposing areas, exposing wall, right? The ratio of window, door, and other opening in the exposing wall. We studied in NFPA 5000, which is building construction for fire protection. We studied, I think, in our module third. What should be the opening of the what should be the opening allowed inside a wall, which is fire uh, some of the combustible buildings. Now we have the severity of fire load, right? The classification of severity for fire load, we have 0 to 34 kilogram per square meter for light severities, and for moderate, the fire loading area of the fire loading we have around 30, and for high it is more than 74 square meter, 74 kilogram per square meter. So we have high quantity of the combustible material in the last one, which is the severe one. So if you can see that this building, right? So if there is a fire at this areas, right, the heat will go travel like this. It will go only in upward direction by the buoyancy force, and actually it was got disconnected from the network issue. So I was just explaining that if there is a higher building and a lower building, and this building catches the fire, the heat from this building will go in this direction, right? And it will warm up this material, and it will also catches the fire. So NFPA says that as for NFPA 80A, we have to protect this area either by fireproofing materials or by the curtain system, which is small quantity of water used for the exposed protection requirement. And those various requirement, we can use either the passive fire protection system to the outside wall, like fire resistance materials, fireproofing, or we can use the water curtain sprinkler system as for NFPA 13 for those area. Okay, that's all about the site plan for fire protection apparatus and the fire department team and all.
Mr. Ravi, the checklist that we just discussed, this
Yeah,
is already available in the IFC or where exactly?
this checklist is not available in the IFC. IFC have just given some requirement, but some of the local department in the USA, in the United States, they have their own checklist. So someone is coming in one state, they have their own requirement that you have to fulfill. So I have
Oh,
taken this one from their site directly. Those requirements comparing the IFC list.
uh-huh.
Normally, this kind of a checklist provided by the AZ department or civil defense team. Okay, so module 4, we have a planned review of water supply for fire protection, right? So we are just going to review the plans, even it is for the fire trucks or for the building fire protection system, the fixed one or the manual one. We studied in fire protection one that we have 4 sources of supply. We have municipal and private fire water distribution mains. We have stored waters and we have the raw waters, right? So we know that all those requirements for water supply. like for the municipal water supply, we have to make sure that the the test data, the hydrogen flow test data is not more older than 1 year. So the validation for that is the 1 year, right? And then when we are considering the public water supply, right, for our fire protection system, we have to there might be some following possible variances should be reviewed to determine the relevant impact, like hourly variances in local uses, future growth, municipality supply charges, and true static. So if we have to keep in the mind in out of 12 months over a year, which time we are going to get the maximum quantity of water to our building, right? Which time we have highest consumption of uh, public water supply line for the household purpose like utilities and plumbing works, and we have to take our information and those all. The second have the stored water supply, right, as for NFA 22, and the last we have raw waters, which is untreated water or non-potable waters we are using sometime for fire protection system. Now moving on to the fire flow requirement, which is as for NFPA 1. NFPA 1 have given some guidelines for the fire flow requirement for it is mainly used for calculation based on the floor area and what is the flow required in DPM to mainly for the manual firefightings, like for the fire department teams, what should be the number of hydrants and so on. So the building, so minimum fire flow is typically based on building construction types, area of the building, and what is stored inside the building. The combustible materials, the construction type class 1 to class 5, sorry, type 1 to type 5, the floor area, and the combustible product stored inside. Coming one to the industrial fire, right? Most of the industrial fire are not the same, right? We have different kind of the arrangement inside an industry, different fuel involved, different kind of the spill or gas pressurized jet release. So we have different water requirement for all those areas. Here we have some table from NFPA 1, which they have taken from the International Fire Code. That what is the area required for the buildings, right? So the number of hours during which the required fire flow should be available varies from 2 to 10 hours. And so this is the normal fire flow, which is from 2 to 10 hours. And now moving on to the next one, which is for the SCIS guidelines. SCIS says that the fire water reserve effective capacity shall be sufficient to supply water at full design delivery for 6 hours. So for SCIS, we need minimum 6 hour water supply unless the calculation shows that lower demand is acceptable, like 4 hours acceptable or maybe lower than that one. Otherwise, the minimum capacity should be 6 hours at SCIS. And those fire water lines should provide fire waters for the fixed fire protection system as well as the manual fire protection system, which is the monitors, hydrant, and so on. And the maximum pressure should be limited within 175 psi, and the residual pressure shall not be minimum of 20 psi. So if we are calculating the fire flow, here we have the water requirement for the sprinkler system, right? This is our requirement for the sprinkler system. We discuss in based on the occupancy classifications based on the light hazard, ordinary hazard, or extra hazard. This is for the sprinkler system. However, we don't have to add this fire flow requirement to the sprinkler system. These two are the totally separate one, right? The fire flow is only for the manual firefighting operation, and this one is for the fixed fire protection system. So we are not going to combine one. I have included this one just because of the duration required for various uh, conditions. Then fire flow requirement for 1 and 2 family dwelling units or group R3 occupancies and group R4 buildings or townhouses as per B105.1 of International Fire Code, right? So the minimum fire flow required they have given based on the square feet areas, right? So if the building areas, when I'm talking about the building area, they are talking about everything inside the outside perimeter. So this is your perimeters. This should be considered as the total area inside that one, right? So from 0 to 3,600 square feet without a sprinkler system, the minimum fire flow in GPM should be 1,000 GPM, right? For 1 hour, right? So for 1 hour, they need 1,000 GPM for these areas. And if the areas of the buildings more than 3,600 and greater and without automatic sprinkler system, and this table is not going to work for that one. We have another table we are going to use in the next page. Here minimum required fire flow and flow duration for buildings, right? So here they have just considered based on the construction type, right? Remember we discussed in the building construction or the life safety code, like what is the construction types, what is the combustibility of that one, type 1, type 2, type 3, 4 and 5. Type 1 is the most resistive and non-combustible material. Type 5 is the combustible materials. So based on those requirement, here we have the fire flow requirement from the hydrant for fighting the fire. So normally when they are talking about the fire flow requirement, it is just like the manual fire protection fire flow requirement, like from the fire hydrant, what should be the minimum flow available at those fire hydrant for this number of hours, right? So if your building is of type 1 or type 2 construction, and if the building area is 0 to 22,700 square feet, we need 1500 GPM of water for 2 hours, right? So this 2 hours, if the area increasing further, right, the flow requirement also going further for 2 hours. And then we have if the areas goes further more, the capacity is going high and the flow duration is also going to 3 hours. And even for some cases, if you can say that, if you see this for this one, we need for 4 hours, right? So it's totally based on what is the area, of those interior premises, and what is the type of construction. And the construction types also affect the requirement, because the highly combustible material will need more quantity of water. Let's say, for example, in the first one, here we have type 1 or type 2 construction. So they have given maximum area in a square feet is 22,700 square feet. Going to last for type 5, they have just considered maximum limit is 3,600 sorry 3,600 square feet. So this is the first one. This one is 5 times higher than this one, right? Or maybe 7 or 8 times higher than this one. So the higher the combustible materials, the higher the flow requirement. So while you are reviewing some plan and you are looking for those things, we have to follow for the IFC for those the various equipment and various connections. We have to look for the IFC code. What is the flow requirement from the hydrant, and what will be the duration of that one. Based on that, we have to size our underground fire water networks for those localities.
Mr. Rabi, here this table will be for the complete area that's covered by that hydrant, right?
Yeah, complete area that covered by the inside perimeters.
So, for example, even if it is, for example, more than one building, for example, small houses or whatever, and like a compound or whatever, small premises with multiple building. We
Yeah.
will take the overall area, or
We have to take the building by building, or even you can take the overall areas, and based on that, you have to make sure that suppose what is your question? This is a compound, right? And inside that compound, we have one building here, and we have two building here. So based on the building flow requirement, if the compound is big, if the compound is big, we have to go for all the buildings one by one, because what is the area of this building? Based on that, we have to demand water for this location, right? And similarly for these other buildings, we have to calculate this one. Or if your compound is not so big, right, something like a small housing society, we can also calculate the as a complete. But I think for going more into detail, we have to go to IFC code requirement for looking the manual fire protection supply requirement for those areas.
Mhm.
Because if you can see here, we have the maximum area they have given, area greater than 295,000 or 296,000, right? Almost 0.3 million square feet. We need 6,000 GPM flow for 4 hours. If your area is like that, yeah, of course, if your area is a maximum of this limit, we want the flow 6,000 GPM. So the fire will only start in any one area, either this areas or this areas. So your question is also valid. We have to consider for the complete areas, and then we have to size the maximum flow requirement for 4 hour durations. Either they will use the fire hydrant at these locations, or maybe they will use at this location based on the origin of the fire.
Yeah, because especially if we are talking about, for example, 6,000 GPM, this will not be coming from, for example, a single hydrant. It will be at
Yeah,
least maybe if each is 2,000 GPM, for example, per
they
hydrant,
will take two hydrant. Yeah, exactly.
two or three hydrants minimum.
Exactly. I have the NFPA 20 handbook, and I saw into that the one you are talking. Uh, One calculation. I will just discuss that one. Just wait a moment. They're saying there is a Type 5 construction building. Type 5. I think I have shared you handbook also, right? You can go into page number 639. They said that there is a industrial mill or a small factories which is constructed by Type 5 construction, right? And there is the floor area for that is total floor area is around 167,000, right? So for 167,000 Type 5, we are at this location, right? Because this is Type 5 construction. This is Type 1, Type 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the area is around 167,000. So anything greater than 85,000, they need 8,000 GPM for those areas, right? If it is Type 5 construction. Again, National Fire, again, NFPA 1 18.4 says that if this building is protected by a sprinkler system, right? If this building is protected by a sprinkler system, the one I just said, let me go to the blackboard. I think it will be better to share there.
Sarabi, you said just you share already the handbook of NFPA 20.
Yeah, I have shared the link, link for in the first module only. The link contains NFA 20, NFA 25, NFA 30, and all. I think six or seven
Oh.
I attached there, but I think the link expired now. Maybe don't download it, or someone had downloaded. I will again attach that one. So here we have one exercise, right? I will share that one again. I will attach that one. Don't worry. So this building is Type 5. Type 5. Construction 000 means no fire ratings for all the buildings. It's like a mill factories, right? It's a 6-story mill. Some factories 6-story mill. And the area of this building is this building is sixth floor, right? So there is six floor in this building. So we have to calculate the total areas of the floor, not only the ground floor, right? Uh, if you are referring to the table we discussed just a while ago, the area of the mill is around the floor area I'm talking about. The ground area is around 27,750 square feet. This is for one floor. So we have to multiply this one by 6 to get the complete area for the sixth floor. So if you are multiplying it by sixth floor, right, we'll come to a value of around 166 500 square feet, right? This is the total area we have to consider for the fire flow requirement from the height. Now again, 18.4532 of the NFPA 1, which is fire code, says that if this building is protected by a sprinkler system, right? If it's protected by the sprinkler system, we can reduce the flow capacity further to 75%. So 75% reduced if protected by a sprinkler system. So in this case, we calculated the total floor area. We have 166,500 square feet, right? And we have to reduce 75%. We have to reduce 75%. Then we will come to a value of around 2,000 GPM. Just wait a moment. 84512. Okay, so we came to a value of this one, right? So this is a mill factory, and the total area is 27,750 square feet. This is the area, but this building is 6 story in height. So we have to consider the complete building area. So we have to multiply by 6, and then our value is 166,500, right? So for this one, we the table we discussed 184521, the fire flow tables. They said we need 8,000 GPM flow, right? So we need 8,000 GPM for 4 hours continuous, as for the table we discussed in the beginning. Now again, the other in NFPA 1 18.4 says that if your building is protected by a sprinkler system, we can reduce this capacity to 75%. So now only we have to consider 25% of 8,000, which is around 8,000 into 0.25, right? Sorry, 2,000. So we have a requirement of around 2,000 GPM water for these factories, right? So the minimum number of hydrant for this one should be two max. We have to place two hydrant around these areas, and the maximum distance between these maximum spacing between the hydrants should not be more than 152 meter or 500 feet. Now, what is the spacing between those hydrant, and what is the flow requirement, right? We discussed into our fire supply in fire protection 1 regarding the rating of the hydrant, right? So the rating is starting from 1500 GPM. Class AA ratings of the fire hydrant is around 50 GPM, and our requirement is here 2000 GPM. So for this application, we need a minimum 2 fire hydrant, right? And those fire hydrants, the maximum distance between the hydrants should not be more than around 500 feet or 152 meters. So this is how we have to calculate the fire flow requirement for those buildings. Now, this one gives us the exact. This one gives us the requirement for the fire flow. The one Mr. Ranas discussed in the beginning, that we have to consider one building or the complete building. I think we have to consider the building wise. We have to consider the individual buildings, because we have to consider the floor area also. What is the number of floors? Based on that, we have to take the area from the calculations. So, Anas, you got the point?
Yeah, it seems to be clear now. I think if the buildings are very close to each other, that the heat can be transferred between one building to another, then we have to consider both areas.
Yeah,
If, if
yeah, we
they
have
are
to consider
away,
both
it will
areas.
be.
Yes, exactly. Or we
Mhm.
have to consider for the fireproofing and the curtain system protection.
Yeah.
Okay, now we are moving on to the distribution networks, the fire water supply lines underground, right? So this will be totally based on NFPA 24, and the main shall be designed as a grid with loops around the fire blocks, right? So we have to design as a grid and the combination of loops around the fire blocks, such as process unit, utilities areas, power generation, and all those areas. Mostly you can see this one in plants. Most of the industrial plants, they just move the ring. They just make their plan like a loop, so that they can use loop in case of the maintenance, right? If they want to close one, they will just close by the sectional control valve, and they will do the maintenance. So when you are reviewing the plan for the fire protection system, right? It should be capable of withstanding the usual load, unusual load, and sometimes severe load. Those coming from the fire protection system by time to time. Like say that the fire pump pressure surges, suddenly pressure goes higher in the fire protection system, right? Or maybe someone of the deluge valve activated. When deluge valve activated, suddenly water started flowing. At maybe at some point, there will be the peak in the pressure. So that pressure we have to keep in mind. And the last one, we have the sudden closing of opening of valve, right? We need minimum, any gate valve or any isolation valve should not be closed below 5 seconds, right? So we have to close the valve in 5 seconds, not lesser than that. If the valve too fast, uh, the the water is having some mass and velocity, so it is a momentum, right? So those momentum will strike the gate of the valve, and at that time there is no flow, so it will put the uh, tremendous amount of the force on the piping and the valve. It might damage the system. So we have to keep all those things in mind, right? And then when reviewing the plan, look for the minimum diameter of fire hydrant should be 6 inch, right? So below 6 inch pipe is not allowed for fire hydrant as per NFPA 24. But for mains, sometimes we don't have any hydrants, but we have only underground networks for the sprinkler system, right? Let's say this is our main loop, and from this main loop we have taken one connection to one building, right? Which it might be for sprinkler system or standpipe system, water specific system, or foam system. This side shall be this side shall be less than 6 inch, right? So we can use 4 inch also, or 3.5 inch also, based on the hydraulic calculation. But in no case for the fire hydrant, we don't have to go below 6 inch as for NFPA 24, because at that time we have higher friction losses when the hydrant is working at the full capacities, and we may encounter more pressure losses due to those frictions. We have to do the hydraulic calculation for the underground fire water networks, and we have to make sure that The pipe is sized exactly for our total demand, right? What we have calculated for our fire protection system. And for those systems that are not hydraulically calculated shall have main at least as large as the riser, right? So when they are talking about the without hydraulic calculation underground fire water means, which is not possible nowadays, but if it is like that, suppose your sprinkler system is pipe schedule method. We discussed in NFPA 13 that we have pipe schedule method. We don't have to do hydraulic calculation. We have to use this NFPA formula and table to size the pipe. So in that case, the fire water main shall be less 1 inch larger than the fire protection riser. So if your riser is for 4 inch, the underground fire water should be 6 inch, and so on. And the size of fire service mains supplying fire protection system shall be approved by ASJ, right? As for NFPA 24, they said this should be approved by the ASJ by keeping following things in the mind. What is the construction and occupancy of the plant, fire flow and pressure of water required for those projects? What is the adequacy of water supply? So all those things should be approved by the authorities having jurisdiction, right? In most of the cases, fire water networks are installed along the plant road, right? It never cross the road, or we are not allowed to cross the road unless it is necessary, right? If it is not necessary, if you are going before the roads, or in that case, in case of the maintenance, we have some difficulties, or you have to bury the pipe below 1.2 meters the ground if it is some heavy road, the vehicle access road, or maybe the trucks and all those things can have heavy loads on those fire protection equipments. And in any case, any fire protection line should not go inside a building, right? Other than the riser supply. We discussed this one in fire protection 1, right? We are allowed to go some certain area inside the building with some condition. And we need sectional control valve, right? The sectional control valve required as per 6.6.1 of NFPA 24. This says that we need sectional valve for at appropriate location, right, within the piping system, so that in any case the 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 number of fire protection equipment or connections should not be more than 6. Like let's say this is our line, right? And this is our fire protection, one hydrant, standpipe system, hydrant, standpipe system, hydrant, and standpipe system, right? So now since we have 6 fire protection equipment, right? Fire protection equipment can be hydrant, standpipe system, deluge system, a sprinkler system. In any case, it shall not be more than 6. So here we have to put one control valve at this location and one control valve at this location, so that in case of the fire, we don't have to shut down the complete plant. Just shut down these areas, close these two section control valve, and do the maintenance in these areas, right? And all other areas will be in the service. And based on some requirement, while doing the maintenance in area, we may need uh, temporary fire trucks with the water and all to fight the fire if anything happened during those times. This is a requirement of NFPA 24 while you are uh, supplying water to the underground networks. If we have more than 6 number of equipment, we need a sectional control valve. This is the same one, the one I was discussing, right? For a single run of fire water lateral, right? So fire water lateral normally means this is our This is one line, right? This is one line going on, and from here we have taken some another connection, right? And this is going to stop here, this line.
So
And
like a branch.
yeah, like a branch, yes. In those we cannot add more than five fire protection devices. It is not a loop. It's just like one branch going to five those different equipment. What they want to know, if we have more than five equipment, right? So we have to give a loop, not a branch, because now again we have to follow the hydraulic principle that if there is more equipment, the more flow. So take the advantage of the loop, like a branch. Yeah, lateral means just a branch or a some cut away from that one. And your fire water main shall be sized based on 100% of total demand, right? Uh, with the shortest hydraulic part out of service, right? Shortest hydraulics part out of service means, we have to size our underground networks with the hydraulics and software. Keep in mind that in any case, we the supply line providing the full demand at 100% design capacity. One thing we have to always think while you are designing any fire protection system for a new project, right? The future expansion, right? If you know your plant is going to expand a lot in the future, so based on that, we have to size your fire water network, because you don't want to giving another loop, another fire pump image, and also if there is a future expansion, you better you may approach with your the engineering team or the management team. What is those plans, so that we can just extend the same line to the future use.
Mr. Ravi, the just before the last point,
Mm.
when we do the hydraulic calculation, we need to take out the shortest path, you mean?
Just wait a moment. Fire water main shall be sized based on providing 100% of total fire water demand with the shortest hydraulic path. It is if it is possible, then it is okay, but it's not the shortest one. What they are trying to say, in this case, if this is our suppose this is our warehouse, right? And here we have a fire water network going like this, right? It is like this. So what they want to tell you that just connect your riser at this location, not at this location, because when you are connecting at this location, we are taking the shortest hydraulic path, not too far from those systems. This is what their intention for saying that one. And then we have the depth of pipe, right? What should be the minimum depth for the pipe below the ground, below the road, right? Sorry. So it should be, if it is our ground level, 0.8 meter in general condition, most of the cases. If it's any roadway, 0.9, and if it is going below railway tracks, we should bury our pipe at least 1.2 meter below to avoid any kind of the jam into our piping system. This is one of the report that from one of the previous project. This is one of the some of the previous project. It is for underground fire water mains, right? You can see how they have arranged this one, right? It's a complete loop, area wise areas. Like you can see, this is our number of hydrants in all those areas. Then we have some connections at each location for the deluge valves and so on. So in any case, let's say count from this side. We have one equipment here, 1 2 3 4 5 6. So we are considering this one. We have to put a sectional control valve here, right, so that we can take this out of service, and one control valve at this location. Similarly, we need at this location also, right? So in any case, the maximum number of fire protection equipment connections shall not be more than 6 to put into the isolation and fight the fire. This is the one. This is the one aspect of that one. And this is how, if you are performing your calculation in the PipeNet software, your report should be look like that one. And this kind of the graph and all those things you cannot get in software, which is not capable of doing this one. So any kind of the underground fire network analysis, those should be done in the PipeNet or HAAS or any similar equivalent software which is capable of doing this kind of the calculations. So now we have the checklist now, a checklist for the piping, for the height and so on. Right. So as I said that if we have the checklist, it is very easy for us to count all the points which we have to consider while reviewing a plan, and we don't have to miss anything, right? So we'll go one by one, just in short. So all the pipings in the fire services shall be as per 10.11, which is from benefit 24, right? And all the underground fire water networks shall not be rated at less than 150 psi, right? So the minimum, the working pressure is normally around 150 psi for the underground fire water networks. Or it should be for the maximum system working pressure, right? So sometimes the system working pressure is more than 200 psi or 250 psi. So we have to size our fire protection and lines with the maximum working pressure of the system, but in any case it shall not be less than 150 psi or 10.3 bars as per NFPA 24. Point number 3 talks about if you want to put any underground networks, if you want to put any underground networks inside the building, right? We discussed this point that it should be not more than 600 mm inside the building, right? So the maximum we can take is inside the building is only around 600 mm. That be connected to the riser only, because the more of the length is there, it will be more difficult to find any kind of a leakage, or during the maintenance it will be an issue. Point number 4 talks about the underground fire water networks diameter shall be less than 6 inch if it is supplying to fixed water-based fire protection system and as for the hydraulic calculations. Point number 5 talks about regarding the types and grade of the materials and all those requirements. Point number 6 talk about the freezing protection, right? If there is chances for the freezing, the pipe should be at least put below the area of the frost line. Normally the frost line is the line above that the piping exposed to freezing condition. If it's line below that one, those freezing condition cannot be affecting those underground fire water networks. And when we have above ground piping, and if in those areas we have chances for the freezing, we have to protect this by some freezing protection, meaning side to keep the temperature in those areas at least 40 degrees Celsius Fahrenheit, right? And the thrust blocks should be as per NFP 6.1 of 24, the one we discussed regarding the T bend and all we required to withhold the load. And then we have the requirement for the hydrostatic test, right? 200 psi for the maximum, 1.5 times of the maximum working pressure for hours. And the flushing flow rate, we have to flush the piping once construction begins, right? Just to remove all the obstruction from the piping as per NFPA District 24 requirement. And then moving on to for the hydrant, what should be the possible checklist for the hydrant, right? The hydrant should be approved by the jurisdiction as per NFPA 24, the ASJ or the civil defense team. In any case, the minimum diameter of the hydrant shall not be less than 16, and try to keep the hydrant should be at least 40 feet from the building, right? So that the fire protection team should be safe while fighting the fire. And less than 40 feet is also allowed if the building height is less than that one, the one we discussed in the previous modules. The cross section of the fire hydrant shall be provided into the drawings. Piping support and all those locations should be deal inside the drawings, so we have to look for that one. The top of the hose outlet shall be at least 18 inch above the grade. We'll go to that in the next page, right? And between the hydrant and suppose this is our underground loop, and from that, if you are taking some connection to one fire hydrant, right? We have our fire hydrant here. Within 6 meter of the hydrant, we have to provide one isolation valve, right? We need isolation valve for each hydrant, so that we can close that in case of the maintenance. And then point number 9 talks about the spacing between the hydrants, right? It is based on the various, now it is totally based on the various local and state government, right? But as an average, in the administrative support, utilities and tankage area, we can between 60, 90, and sometime up to 120 meter. But most probably in the process areas, we can keep it within 45 to 60 meter. This is the construction. This is the typical hydrant connection with minimum height requirement, right? So while reviewing the plan, we have to look for the clearance between the grade and the connection of hydrant should be at least 18 inch minimum, which is 457 mm, so that it is easy for the firefighter teams, to connect into those hoses and fight the fire. And the maximum should be 914 mm, almost around 36 inches, no more than that. Now let's review it one by one. This is the thrust block, right? Which is when there is a change in the flow, we need a thrust block. This is our main piping. This is the main underground mains, and from here we are going to the hydrant. We have a isolation control valve, right? This is a gate valve, just to control that one. And then we have our hydrant, right, with all those kind of the stone and the slabs. Then moving on to the valve. Yeah.
Rabi, so here for each single hydrant, there should be an isolation valve in addition to the BIVs or post indicator valve on the main network.
In addition to that.
Six equipment.
Yes, this is what required by the NFP 24, but maybe this might not be followed by some of the contractor which they are installing into some of the commercial complex. They don't care about that one, but this is what required by the NFP 24.
Mm-hmm.
So that if there is any maintenance issue in those hydrants, shall be simply closed by the nearby valve. Yeah. And those valves should be provided with some the road box, underground box, so that someone go and can open, or maybe connected by a PIV, so that someone can operate from the above ground. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So connection to water, now we are moving on to the valve, right? All those we'll discuss, right? The connection to water supply and supply lines, supply pipe to sprinkler system shall be controlled by valve meeting the requirement of NFPA 24 6.1. We have to go directly to 6.1 of NFPA 24. And second talks about at least one indicating valve for each source of water supply is detailed in NFPA 24 section 6.2. 6.2 is talking about the connection to water supply, right? Point number third talks about for more than one source of water supply, a check valve is required at each connection as detailed in NFPA 24 6.2.2. Because we have to avoid the backflow from one equipment to another equipment. Control valve required by NFPA 24 section 6.2.2 are provided on each side of the check valve. The point 4 is mainly talking about the backflow prevention device. We discussed that in our fire protection one, that we need there is a two check valve and there is two gate valve at the discharge side and at the other side. This is requirement for the backflow flow devices. And the valve should be readily accessible to open it easily, right? If there is a PIV, there should be cross-sectional drawing for PIV should be provided. And point number 8 talks about PIV shall not be below 40 feet from the building, right? Additional is allowed if the building height is less than the 40 feet, so that if the building collapses in case of the fire, the firefighter teams is not getting damage from that one. Here we have a PIV. Here we have a PIV connection, right? Normally, for all of the hydrant, we need one connection. This is a underground main networks, and this is connected by a PIV here, right? It is a indicating type, so at the top it will there's we can see it is open or closed, right? And it is also supervised. So if someone is opening or closing, it will give some signal to fire alarm control panels. And this is the locking one, right? This is the arrangement from there. They have to open valve, so it is locked here. Just open, and you can open or close this valve. These are the requirements of the PIVs. The maximum distance from the grade line to the top of the PIV should be 3 feet, not more than that. We almost about 916 mm. The one is the common one for all the valve to open properly. Now we have plant review for water-based fire protection system. It is for the sprinkler system, right? Let's take a break. We'll be back at 5:30.